It's 4 o'clock, so I'm going to call this meeting to order. I welcome everybody to this special board meeting we have today in regards to discussing what our Governor Kelly had put into effect as far as cancellation of schools, and we have some sort of things to discuss in regards to that. So with that, I need a motion to adopt the agenda.
I so move.
Thank you, Gina. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Great. All those in favor? 6-0.
Is Patty coming?
She's going to be late. She's in a meeting right now, so she should be here shortly.
That sounds good.
So we're going to move on to discussion items. First on the agenda, we have school closing and activity cancellations. So,
I think it was imperative that we have a meeting and we can share with you what we know so far about the governor's executive order to close Kansas schools as we know it at this point in time. I did have a copy of the executive order put in your packet. The key thing is on the second page, there are 3 items, 1, 2, and 3. Number 1, all K-12 school buildings or facilities, whether public or private, used for student instruction are closed and cease in-person instruction until May 29th, 2020, except as allowed below. Number 2, any school building or facility operating with a total of fewer than 10 students, instructors, or staff may continue normal operations so long as they comply with all directives regarding social distancing, hygiene, and other methods to slow the spread of COVID-19. Number 3 is what is key for us. The Commissioner of Education and the State Department of Education will formulate guidance for school districts to create and implement continuous learning plans, as well as implement in-person instruction protocols and methods for small groups of students on subjects not reasonably susceptible to continuous learning. Adhering to this guidance and in consultation with local health department, K-12 schools may conduct appropriate, limited in-person instruction in small groups of students so long as they comply with all directives regarding social distancing, hygiene, and other methods to slow the spread of COVID-19. It is very evident to me as we've worked the last few days with the State Department, the Health Department, and your staff that this is something that we can follow and we can ensure that education continues for our students, and we are supportive of the effort to reduce spreading COVID-19. And the concern is not so much right now, but what happens in the next several weeks. And it could happen that if things explode in Kansas, we'll get a total closure. I mean, that could happen. But the reality is, from what I've read, you understand that there are some options that are available to us to ensure that our students continue to learn. And when I talk about your amazing staff, you need to know that right away, your tech staff, Rich Keller and Brenda White, they've been through cleaning all the computers so that when we get things started, families can come according to procedures and have the computers to take home to the kids that they have at school. They've gone, so between the laptops and the iPads and the Chromebooks that we have at the elementary and extras in other places, we have enough for the elementary students to each have a computer to take home. The other thing that you have in your packet is maybe you didn't get a copy. We have a survey.
It's posted.
we have a survey, and Linda, are you talking about it, or you want?
I'm gonna have Christy scroll while I do this, so I don't step into the room. These are the questions. We made some modifications today from what we started with due to the state conference call, and they wanted to know a couple other things. Dealing with the technology so that we know what we're sending home with, if they have internet access and such. So, if you wanna scroll, Christy. The basics of their name and their children's names and what grade level they're in. And do they need us to provide a device for them at home? And then how many of their children will need a device? We need to know if they have internet. And is their data limited or unlimited? Because some do have a limit max, and some of those companies, those providers are waiving that. So we're gonna try to get together the resources. If parents need help, we can get that to them. We need to know what the speed of their internet is, if they have it, who their provider is, if they have a smartphone with a data plan, and if you do not have internet, provide us the address. And do they have transportation available, or are they willing to drive to an access point if internet is provided to them? So if there's any way that we can have a point of location where internet is available, can they drive to that location possibly? Or if there's no more than 10, you know, are they willing to come in and be at a place that it is provided? And then the phone number, when we can schedule a time for them to pick up their belongings, check out their device, and get that done, so that we can start scheduling that and getting that going. And I would like to send this out tonight. Kind of have a limit maybe by, we talked about Saturday, so that Sunday I could see who's answered it and who hasn't, because we're going to have to do some phone calls if they didn't get the link or don't have email, or we're going to send this out through Activity so that parents, everybody gets it. So.
And Brenda, can I share? One of the other things that we discovered today, if families qualify for Medicaid services or supplemental nutrition services through the state, they actually can get free or reduced cost internet through different providers. So we can help them get that as well, if needed.
We also have a survey for staff, because we have staff that are in the country without connectivity. We have staff that all they have is their phone. They really don't have internet at home. So we're needing to know about staff as well. We'll be getting that out as well.
Anybody have any questions related to that?
Is there anything you want me to add, or? Okay.
It's been a very interesting process because, of course, Brenda's been here all week, and so we've been talking and looking at things. She's been in contact with the principals and Rich, and then limited conversations with the principals, and then today bringing in the tech staff, the principals, and your DLT, the district leadership team, and sitting here. I'm laughing because I thought we'd be finished about 3 o'clock. Well, 3:35, we were finally leaving. That's how dedicated, I share that as I'm chuckling, because that's how dedicated your staff is to making sure we make this work. This is not an easy thing for anybody to deal with, whether it's the families that now their whole family routine is different because kids are home all day long and they have jobs and things to do, whether it is the staff, you know, how do I plan for what's coming up? Well, here's the wonderful part. Not only do you have a wonderful dedicated staff, but the state of Kansas has some amazing people, and the State Department, in conjunction with working with the governor, had a task force. It started out to be 25 people, and it started out to be people that are like Teachers of the Year, people that have been recognized across Kansas in different areas. One of the Teachers of the Year last year was a preschool teacher. So, you know, it's a mix of across the board people that could give input. And then they had a group of superintendents and principals, a select group that could look at and review what is being shared by the task force. So at your place, you have this document that looks like this. And this is the continuous learning guidance. And it's wonderful. I want you to look at page 26 and 27. There are a lot of things in this document that will give our teachers resources and insight into how you plan for distance instruction of sorts. And what I think is important to note in here, because it's different. Kids are at home and there are the distractions of home and there are things that go on there. They are giving, if you look down the page at the bottom where it says pre-K, daily learning time, 30 minutes of direct instruction. And then they give some examples of things that you can do, 5 minutes of this and 5 minutes of that. And you all know how pre-K kids are distracted. You may only get 10 minutes in and then something else comes up and then you come back. So it keeps them, their little brains, working on the academics, but in time appropriate for what we have when we're looking at home instruction versus what they do in the classroom where they're getting instruction all day long, but they're not distracted. And if you go through this, you'll see that every age group, they have given some suggestions and some breakdowns of time and how things can be presented. I share that page with you. There's a lot more in here, but we're all concerned because we're still responsible. And every time Dr. Watson, the Commissioner of Education, and Dale Dennis talk to us, they talk about we have to have plans that ensure competency in whatever the teacher chooses as what needs to be done between now and when our school would dismiss it. We are able to continue to do this kind of instruction till the end of the year. So this helps give the teacher some guidance in how they put their competencies together and then how they work with the kids in distance learning. Yes, it is not like being in a school with them from 8 o'clock until 3:30, but it's the best alternative because there are some parameters. One of the things is, this gives stuff and information, and your staff has been looking at how to use the computers and how to have distance learning. I'm not the expert. Denise, maybe you'd like to talk a little bit about your experiences with Google in the classroom?
Sure. Brenda, do we have the PowerPoint that we could use? The one that we made? Do we want to start there?
Do you want to start there, or do you just want to talk? Is it on here? It's on the tab. It's open on the very last tab. I just kind of summarized today what we talked about
Okay, that's
Sure.
perfect.
at the very last tab.
It might flow better if it's done.
Yeah, if you
more
do that, that's
comprehensive.
great. You start out with your part and then we'll go.
This was put together kind of on the fly, so.
Great.
Okay.
So one of the things that we talked about, Christy and I did, and it will look a little bit different in our buildings, is that Monday we will meet with all of our staff, not face-to-face, but in Zoom meetings, in smaller Zoom meetings. Zoom is an online platform that's free that can either be done via phone or through your computer that allows you to conference call, if you will, and you can do that video or with audio support. And the three options that were given to us would be online instruction, and that's the platform we would really like to use for that. And one of the things that's stressed in that document is that your platforms are consistent, right? So that way it's easier for parents to know how to access assignments, how to communicate with teachers and staff, rather than using lots of multiple different things. So the one that we chose, because we have familiarity with it already in the district, would be Google Classroom. And within Google Classroom, there's all sorts of different options. Google is a free platform. Google Hangouts is where you could communicate face-to-face with your instructor or with a series of students in a group. There's a calendar there. There's documents, and documents are really great. I don't know if you guys have worked in Google, but you can work on them simultaneously. There's Google Classroom where For example, as a teacher, I could have each class divided. I could also have my different subjects divided, English, social studies, science. I could have all my assignments there, videos underneath them, links to go to, and all of that is done on Google. So that's one of the things we talked about. One that isn't up here that we talked about for our younger students, our pre-K set, kindergarten, first grade, even into second grade, is a program called Seesaw. It's, for right now, a free program, at least for the next 60 to 90 days, that we could also look at that's kind of geared more to our younger students. The other thing about Google that's interesting to note, we already have all that set up. All of our students have a Gmail account, they just don't have the email accessibility, and so they have a login and a password anyway, and we would work, like I can videotape myself walking parents through how they could access that. So, do you want me to continue on that, or Christy, would you like
Well,
to?
and I just maybe just kind of the face-to-face, right now, we're allowed to have one group of 10 students or 10 people in the building, so if you have one teacher, you have 9 students. Talking about like woods and metals, how do we do that online? You know, there's a lot of elective classes that we have to consider at the high school, that maybe not so much at the elementary
So
school.
there might be a way to let some of those kids come in and finish like their woods projects and things like
Right,
that.
as long
so
as
they
we
don't exceed the number of kids
Right.
at one time and.
Is that in a classroom or in a building?
in the building. Wow. 10 students in the building.
And they can't be closer than 6 feet to each
Correct.
other.
Yes.
But
So if
something could be potentially worked out so those kids can
Yes.
finish the projects that they started
Yes.
at.
Right.
That would be good for
And
them.
they suggest in that guideline that the elective or the special classes fulfill the same time frame that the other classes that are online are allowed, or not really allowed, but really it's saying that 30 minutes per class or per teacher per day, right?
Yes.
For a total of, what is it, 3 hours? No, it was 6 hours, it was
6 hours.
6 hours a day, I guess. So that's not just online, that's not looking at a computer for 6 hours a day. That includes, you know, instruction plus working in that class. So the face-to-face, for maybe like, you know, there was talk about music, band and vocal. They are Zooming and singing, you know, because they can all sing at the same time. Or be one of the 10 that can come in the building and then they play for 30 minutes or whatever. So the teachers are going to have to be kind of creative in how they're going to make that work.
But they could do music through Zoom, that would be
Yes.
great. And that would be,
Right. Or you can take your instrument home
yep.
and play and
Exactly.
videotape
So
yourself.
there are
And that's
alternatives to still
Right.
allow that. That's
the
good.
only one that I feel like is not as conducive as music as the other electives is shop
Yeah.
metals and woods, because there's equipment that you have to use, and they've already started projects that they're finishing, and it's just that might be have to.
And when we talk about, oh, sorry, David. When we were talking about the Zoom and Google Hangouts, they do sort of work better at our secondary level. Secondary would be 6 through 12.
Yes.
Obviously, it's hard to get 9 students on a Zoom that are first graders interacting and be able to do that.
Pay attention.
And pay attention. So one of the things we talked about, that hybrid, those would be packets, and that's what our staff would work on. Individual packets or group packets for students. They would kind of have a goal that week of what they're working on in each particular area, and then their time would be a face-to-face time, or in some instances via phone, that they're connecting with parent and student, making sure that those goals are being met, and then we do that the next week and start again. What are our goals for this week? We have the packets that support that. We meet at the end of the week, or
It gives
on your
parents a
cycle.
resource if they're struggling at home
Absolutely.
with the packets
Absolutely.
and areas.
And then for our younger students, we can also have them in the buildings in very, very small groups if they needed that extra instruction, enrichment, special ed time,
Kids that we
tiered.
knew that struggled immensely with their reading, we could find a way to
Sure.
offer some instruction for them to keep them from getting behind.
Sure. Yes, that's what we had decided today.
How about these families that don't have parents at home, or kids that are gonna be at daycares, day centers, with grandma that doesn't know that it's what?
We talked about that, we really did. We talked about that quite a bit, because we realized this is a strain, because you have working parents, you have children going to daycare, we have families that live with grandparents, and they might not have that digital technology, and that's really where it's kind of done on a case-by-case basis. If that's just a packet of materials that goes home, and a phone call is made, periodically to check in, that's okay. It really is done on the best needs of that family, because all those families are going to be different, and we understand that. And one of the things they really talked about is allowing for flexibility and grace, because this is, some kids are going to learn really well this way, and others it's going to be more of a struggle.
So
Some will have more support at home and some will have a
Absolutely.
little less.
speaking of the other corners of the county, like say Barnard, that does not have cell phone or internet.
Unless you have.
That's something I had a quick
Next
question
step,
about too.
they have next
But
step.
that could be potentially where you talked about having a point. That could be like the Barnard Community Building, if they could get internet there. If they could take turns in small groups going there to utilize the internet, that might be.
Just a quick question about the functionality there, because I know we do the same thing in our company as far as we have Google Meetings, we have Skype meetings, but we also record the meetings, because I'm thinking about those that do not have the functionality, that have little kids at home. If the parent come home from work, if they can drive into that hotspot and they can then watch the educational and also get the benefit of the other kids asking questions on this. I'm just asking, are we recording this too, to be able to post it?
We, at the junior high and high school level, we talked about recording lectures and then having maybe like office hours where they can call in or video chat questions or concerns or whatever that they may have with whatever they
Yeah.
watch. That way they can watch the lesson whenever they have a chance or whenever they can get options to.
Your older students, yeah, that will be much handier for them. They can watch the math lesson and then call and say, hey, I have a question about. Text and say, I have a question about. It's probably more what they would do. But
Right.
there's a little bit more flexibility. The younger
Yes,
kids, I
we
can see
did
with that.
talk about recording
We
lessons, yeah.
We also talked about like a virtual tutor, because we will have paras that will be able to assist us as well, that we could always have a virtual tutor out there. Obviously, not everybody can help with calc and geometry or, high-level trigonometry, but at least somebody out there at all times, not necessarily at all times, throughout that school day or different windows in the evening, in a rotating basis, that would be able to assist families.
Well, we also have to consider that we have several students who are taking college courses.
Yes.
And if they don't have internet access at home, because right now they're taking the courses online at school.
Yep.
So we have to consider options for them as well. So, and, our college algebra, government, speech, and history, they all have to take, it's being taught by our current teachers, and they're getting college credit for it, so they have to take the final from Cloud County, and we don't know what that's gonna look like either. Currently, past practice, it's been paper pencil, so they have to come in and take it, but I don't know if Cloud we're just kind of at the whim of whatever they tell us.
And they're in the same boat.
Yes, but there isn't very many really, I don't know off the top of my head how many kids we have, but we don't have a whole lot that are doing that. So maybe we could bring them in if they're less than 10 and of course not complete lockdown at that point. So, the packets, we talked about if students don't have internet access or they don't have phones that they can get in contact with teachers, that we would have maybe certain times they can come in and get a packet of information that they can send home and they can work on it. And maybe phone call teachers if they have questions or if they're not sure about something.
The survey is going to be key too, because
Yes.
there are some things that we understand the communication businesses in Kansas are working with school districts too. So when we have the information there, we could go to them and see what options. They did say some areas it will take months to get it built there, but what can we do to assist? So I think that will help. The other thing is the continuous learning is key to sharing with our community what I said earlier about the competencies. It is key to ensuring that at the end of this time, we can say to our parents and to our patrons, and we can say to you board members, we've done everything within our power to be sure that our kindergartners are ready to go to first grade, our 7th graders are ready to go to 8th grade. The list goes on of those kinds of things. So teachers, as we spend next week in planning at the building levels with their principals, the discussion about how the state has said we could offer learning, and they have the 3 options there: online, face-to-face, or packets, and the hybrid makes sense. That your teaching instruction staff will be able to figure out what's gonna work best with the needs and for them to get kids where they need to be. And it can be a mix of these things. And one of the things I'm most excited about 2 o'clock this afternoon, the county is allowing us, the county health department is allowing us to have, they're the ones that make the ultimate decision at this point in time, 10 people in the classroom. Now, all the teachers can be in the building working in their rooms, but whoever's doing instruction, we can have only 10 in the room at the high school and only 10 in the room at the elementary school. But it does allow some of that face-to-face instruction that will help. And it depends upon the teacher. It might end up being, if I'm a first grade teacher or kindergarten teacher, I'm saying I'm only going to bring in 4 kids, and I'm going to bring their 4 parents with them. And the teacher that, you see what I'm saying about 10 is the maximum number, as long as things stay the way they are.
Is there options that in 3 weeks and we still have 0 cases in Lincoln County or 3-county area, can that go to 50 kids in the building and
It
back
could.
to somewhat?
What the State Department has said is it's dependent upon Kansas Department of Health and Environment and your local health department. Our local health department feels at this point in time 10 is the maximum. But if there's nothing else, I might call Ladonna in 3 weeks and say, can we go to 7 teachers having 10 kids? What the State Department has said is as long as they're not passing in the hall at the same time and you don't have them doing anything that's common, those 10 individuals are separated. We could possibly go to more. And so time will tell. My hope would be that's what they would tell us, not that we have to shut down homework.
Yes.
We could just bring it back in a little more at a time.
Yeah.
People in there, 10 students at a time.
10 people in the room.
Correct, 10 people in the building. Looking at classes, would that mean that we're going to scatter teacher around throughout the span and the school actually be open for a longer period? As well,
Well, we did talk about that today. The guy that, I watched a webinar yesterday, and the suggestion is you try to keep your instruction within the same time period that a normal day would be. But with that said, parents work and, it's not necessarily possible for that always to happen because, some young kids are in daycare. So we would have to be flexible in maybe extending that and being open to parents' requests depending on what the needs are.
And the follow-up question to that would be 10 kids, and we're looking at transportation too as far as school buses, how that's going to work, because same thing there, you're going to be 6 feet apart in school buses.
Well,
And
So
the rule,
I guess what you guys are tasked with.
the rule they're saying to us is it has to be a large bus, and you can have 9 kids on the bus, because the driver makes the 10th person.
and 2 things. One, the guidance is telling us to keep it simple and to remember that we have 6 weeks left of school, or approximately 6 weeks left of school, and we need to develop a core set of competencies that we expect these kids to know by the time they're done. So we're not trying not to make it overcomplicated, we're trying to keep it very simple.
Get them what they need.
Correct, yes.
So I guess we're looking to as far as, are they going to get what they need to graduate from the college?
Talk
I
about
mean,
ISL
and in the junior high, maybe not so much, but in
Yeah.
the high school, we have credits that we have to worry about. And then not just this year's credits, but then continue on for next year for those juniors and sophomores and freshmen and incoming 8th graders. But those credits they're hard to make up.
Yes.
And if it's, we want to be able to give them every opportunity at this point to finish the credits that they're in right now.
And I think the important thing is flexibility on a case-by-case basis, because keeping 10 fifth graders apart is a lot different than keeping 10 kindergartners apart.
They don't understand.
They won't understand, and it's very
They
difficult
don't
for them not to
understand.
touch and interact. So we always have to think about that flexibility piece
And there's
there.
not at least 6 of them. In close parks, I'd be walking down the street bouncing basketballs this afternoon when I was at work. It's like,
They can't comprehend something that they haven't seen it affect them yet, so they don't, and the
And there was
small
a
kids just
suggestion
can't.
that Dr. Summers had made about maybe the transportation. if we have that group of 10, they're in math for an hour and a half, and then science for an hour and a half, and then they go home, and then the next set of, a different set of 10 comes in for the afternoon. So that way, we would have transportation, but we might just have to have an extra, I don't know.
Transportation might look
in the
different.
afternoon, I don't know. But it wouldn't be the same kids all day long. Maybe we could,
It sounds like we're getting a plan in place.
If we ever get to, John, do what you say, to have more classrooms of 10 individuals in the room, it really will make it seem more like the normal instruction, because there'll be more teacher-student contact time. But as talented as your staff is with using technology and using Zoom and using Google, there will be some face-to-face that will be better than not having that option.
Yes, and I think that's good, but my thought still is the kids need that social interaction, because it's just, they look forward to going to school.
Yeah.
They don't look forward to going, they may look forward to going and seeing their teachers, but most of them look forward to going and seeing their friends.
And that's why we're lucky to have a counselor at the high school and to have your student advocate at the elementary school, because even in this is the continuous learning plan. Even in using this document, we have to be aware of that social emotional piece that our kids, that impact them highly, and they're used to going to see, I always pronounce her wrong.
Potacek, Mrs. Potacek.
At the elementary school, Ms. Dyson at the high school.
We don't have that.
And so the Zoom will allow things like that to happen if the parents want to set that up. And that could be that the counselors, allocate some of their time for evening talks when the parent can be there with the kid talking to her and hearing, so they can support. Because as parents, we know when our kids are going through tough times. So we just have some options. We're limited by what we don't think of doing. So this is a continuous learning document. Now, there's one more piece. Do you ladies have anything else to add to this?
There's IXL opened up.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
90-day trial for us so that we have that available for students and teachers. You can just kind of keep going through there. I don't know.
Well, this is the guidance that the document kind of in a nutshell, making sure that we take care of all of these things, I guess. And the IXL, 7th and 8th graders have it for all of them, English and math, which is what they've already been doing. They're very familiar with it. They know how to log on. They do it, they can do it on their phones. So for them, it's going to be an easy transition. But what we contacted IXL today, and they are allowing us to have a trial for 90 days. Is it 90 days? 90 days for the rest of our district.
For 3 through 12.
And that's English, math, science, social studies, and Spanish. And that is really, that can track time, that can track where they're at. It gives them problems based on where they're at academically. So it's really a good program for all of our kids.
And it's a program we really wanted to expand next year, so it gives us a really great opportunity to get some data on it and kind of test run. But it's also important to note that as much as technology is a huge piece of this, particularly at the first grade level, still a book in hand is really important. And so one of the things we really talked about was we have what's called Reading A to Z, which if you've ever remember those small adaptable paper books that can be printed off, we'll still be printing those off and sending them home. Because particularly for our younger students, that
to be reading.
Absolutely, and not seeing it on a computer screen. So for some of our younger students, the IXL and those pieces will be more enrichment, not necessarily their main instruction every day. The other thing I was going to say that you saw there was training for staff. At the high school level, those teachers are using Google Classroom a lot more than they are at the elementary level. So we're going to need to work in some training there from our staff that are using it in our building, and the IXL as well.
Well, this is just the guidelines that they have given us. So this is per teacher per day, or is it, if the elementary was just a
That's
day?
total instruction a day.
Okay, yeah. And then 7.
Direct instruction.
So like a second grader, they're saying 60 minutes.
Correct.
Of direct instruction,
Yep,
not
yep.
necessarily learning.
Right.
And then 7
That
through
was
12 is
just
30
the-
minutes per teacher, 3 hours max a day, I guess. Where do we get
It was
6?
3 hours.
Where do we get 6 hours? And we were talking, I don't know.
Okay.
It's been a
Yeah,
long
lots
day.
of
We
over.
keep
Right,
saying
right?
6 hours, and I'm thinking, this is, yeah, okay.
In all reality, it's gonna prepare them for college.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
it's not
that is
lecture
true.
and
Yeah.
everything.
For the most
So
part,
holidays.
all of these avenues of teaching is going to take place at the same day, every day. Are we thinking of emphasizing a certain area of it on certain days and just to get things rolling here off the start?
And that could be something that's
That's a
worked
good
out by our
question.
staff when they meet grade level.
That's part of what next week is designed for. The kids are not involved next week. It's teacher, training, planning,
For
and
them to
service.
plan out how they're going to.
Getting it
deliver.
out.
Right,
Okay.
right. So those are the kinds of things that the principals will meet with all the staff on Monday, however they design that. And then, again, they can't have more than 9 people with them in a room or unless they Zoom.
Zoom.
And your principals are very adept to that. So they may have everybody online in their building because everybody can be in their room as the teaching staff. And they may Zoom with everybody and have the conversation, or they may have small groups.
Yeah, because
But-
the other way I thought was, well, like about a school bus, you go pick up 10 students in this, and then, you know, next one's this, these 10, this, then, and we're thankfully in the center of the county, you know, that'd be another avenue of just, it's all gotta work.
And we kind of talked at the high school, junior high school, doing kind of where a block schedule where you had like 4 hours on one day, 3 hours on another day. So
Yeah,
you're not,
something.
yeah, something, so we don't have this, 7 or 6, 3 hours or whatever it is, every day where they're doing stuff all the time. So maybe we can stretch it out just a little bit.
And teachers are, to get back to your question, David, teachers are used to a routine too. So my guess is that if I'm the 3rd grade teacher and I want to work on math facts, that however I figure out to do it with my class, I could probably do it at a similar time every day when I do math with them, however that's set up.
So if this all works out perfectly and everyone we don't get shut down completely, the kids get all the instruction they need, is there any way without, I feel bad for the seniors as far as graduation. Is there any way they can have 5 kids and they're, I know you'd have to do it in little
Should we
shifts.
do it outside?
3 kids and.
That's
Can
what I
we
was
go
gonna say,
back
can
to
we go
doing it
to the
outside?
track and just be out?
That's what we
Or
used to
they
do.
just would
16
or
hours.
it's still the same thing,
Yeah.
they're shutting down any big groups.
So no problem, no
10.
graduation, no.
At this point, 10 is the max, and you see how we're setting. And what I shared with the team that was here today, in my case, if we were limiting it to 1 graduate, to have 10 family members, it would be, okay, do the Summers family get to attend, or do the Sack family get to attend? There are all kinds of things that make this so complicated,
Yeah.
that as long as the county is saying to us, no more than 10 in a room, separated.
We just have to
by
hope that that changes in a way in which we can adapt, to have some form of something for those kids for graduation, other than sending them a diploma in the mail.
And it might be something like, this all blows over, and next August, when school starts, before they go away to college, it might be that you can do something.
We're just gonna have to be patient, we're gonna have to be patient and maybe think outside the box.
Yeah, we just have to wait and see. So the other big part of this, you have more up here,
Well, these are we just kind of broke it up into what our staff is gonna need.
Okay.
One of the big things that we stressed is, and this is where a support team can really assist with a counselor and a school nurse, is parents are going through a lot right now and really discussing what those parent needs are. Because, we have some families that have 4, 5, 6 children at home, college students coming back, having to work at home, job loss. There's a lot going on right now. So we really, when we talk about individualized plans for families, that's really kind of what we're looking at.
And we kind of had talked a little bit about creating a list of questions for parents. So when maybe we're going to have to schedule a time for kids to come in and get their stuff out of their lockers or get their
Yeah,
stuff out of their
yeah.
classrooms and take them home. And at that point, and get technology, all of that kind of thing, and however we're gonna do that, that would be a good time to have that conversation with parents.
Or we do another thing, I don't know, this might not be school related, I'm thinking about some of these families that are paycheck to paycheck. You know, a lot of us have been able to bulk up on food, whatever supplies, and we don't make care packages for single little kids or anything.
If you go to the very back
Okay.
of the guidelines, yes, it does talk about that. And that's where we can use that support staff and, really make a plan for each family.
Well, we're also, if we have the classified staff who are going to be paid, so we're going to use them in creative ways too, trying to make sure that they're doing something as well.
And they might go fluid in between buildings because I have a lot more classified staff at my building than Christy does, and she's gonna have needs as well, so they might be fluid as well in what they do.
And this is kind of what we were thinking about parents, what they're gonna need. It's really pretty self-explanatory, I think. Unless you guys think there are more things that parents need from us,
Until they get started, if I don't know what they need yet.
Well, and I think teachers are in the same boat.
Yeah,
And I
until
think
we
we're
get
kind
started
of, right,
and start making a plan for what it's gonna look like. I mean, there are parents that know I don't have internet, so this is gonna be a problem. I don't have a laptop at home for my kids, so technology's a problem, but some of them are gonna have a clue what they need until they start.
right.
And some of them are saying, do I get to bring the kids' supplies home so we can do what we need to do at home?
Yeah.
So there are just more questions out
And some of
there.
them are probably overwhelmed with, can I handle doing this with my kids myself?
Some parents aren't cut out to do this.
Yeah,
But I send them to school.
that's why I put them in school. Yeah, some parents are probably very overwhelmed.
Well, yesterday, 2 kids were kicked out of school and the teacher was not drinking.
And we really tried to think about ways that we could make a continuous day still continuous day, like we talked about broadcasting morning announcements and recognizing birthdays and just kind of that
Things
daily.
to make it still feel.
Yes, virtual
little
field
sense of
trips
norm,
and all of those things that we can do to just provide continuation through the day.
And some of those things will help families, like those virtual field trips and things like that. That will give parents something for their kids to do and a way to stimulate their learning, and that will be helpful to them.
And I think teachers are going, it's this, they're learning too,
Yeah.
and so it'll be kind of a week-by-week basis on how well and how much they change and what they see works and what doesn't work, so that's gonna be kind of a fluid thing as well.
A lot of our staff is probably planning already.
Yeah,
Yeah.
oh, yeah.
They know.
Whole
They know.
nation- Whole nation's learning,
Yes.
so each day that goes by
The whole world is learning.
Yeah.
is going to be.
You're right.
So here is the key,
I think this is the last slide. We're just talking about what the counselor, because, there's, we,
Scholarship, I saw that somebody asked it about that online, what am I going to do?
now, most of them, the local ones were due March 1st, but there are some that trickle in that are gonna have to be turned in, and there's just gonna be some guidance. So she's gonna set up office hours also for questions and answers.
Okay.
And then we need to talk about scheduling for next year too. She's got about half the kids scheduled for next year, but, she didn't get to the other half, and so she's gonna have to set up times to phone. She said she'd probably phone call them instead of FaceTime them, just so that they can figure out what they want, and then she get in there again and then go from there. So there's just things that, in the year, you just, and I think, our accreditation visit, which was scheduled for next Friday. We've already sent in our stuff, so we're just gonna have to find another time, maybe. They suggested doing a Zoom kind of meeting.
we will want to do it in June before we change superintendents, so we'll see what we can get lined up with that and the staff.
And that was it, that was the last one.
So all of this is tied in to a bigger complication. And that is, in Kansas, students are required by law to go to school 1,116 hours. In our district, our elementary students have, until school was closed, as we know it, our elementary has 894 hours. Our high school students have 917, almost 918 hours. So KSVE went and worked with the state legislature to change the law so that we can do a waiver this year. And in that waiver, there are certain things we have to say that we're doing. We have to share our developed learning, continuous learning plan, and sometimes you'll hear it called CL. We have to, and we'll bring this to you by the April 6th board meeting, 7th, whatever that is. It's due to the State Department by April 8th. If we have it finished and we have a special meeting before then, we'll bring it to you to approve. We have certain questions that are part of this legal law change that we have to be able to respond, that we're meeting those expectations, because we will continue to get the money that has been allocated to our school district through school funding. So we have certain things we have to say, yes, we're doing this, and how we did it, and give them our plan of study, our continuous learning plan. But we also, this gets back to something that the principal said, because we've been guaranteed a certain amount of money already and it's been allocated for staff, we have to pay all of our classified hourly staff their pay between now and the end of school. And so you heard the conversations about how can we effectively use them. Well, they can run off packets, they can help with some scoring. There are a lot of things they can do that are clerical. I've been joking with Mrs. Schmidt about that modular unit behind the elementary school that needs to be cleaned out. You know, we could send them in with gloves and long sleeves, because I don't know what critters are in there, and do some sorting. Somebody asked today, maybe it was Christy, asked, could they do some painting? Well, sure they could, if it's something that physically and healthy they can do. So we will
And if there's
find,
not more than 10 of them at one time in one place.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
it exactly. So we can find, and like Mrs. Schmidt said, sharing her high school people, her elementary people with Mrs. Walter and the high school people, there are a lot of things that we can utilize and maybe be ahead of some of those manual things that our paras wouldn't normally do, but because it's something that needs to be done and because they care about this district, we can get maybe some things done. So in the disadvantage of all this, maybe we can find some positives. But you needed to know that we do need to pay them, just like our World 10 coaches. You know, all the sports events have been canceled. We have to pay the contracts that we have with people, so, yes.
What about the people that put in more hours than they originally do?
Good question.
The teachers who spend more time teaching than just 7:30 to 3:30?
Well, hopefully they'll be able to figure their schedule so they can have a typical day. Now, you're not gonna have a 7:30 to 3:30. It may be that as a teacher, my plan, when I get everything developed, because I wanna be available for parents in the evening, my day might be a 1 o'clock to 8:30 day, so that I can do that conferencing, Zooming or Googling or
Their
whatever.
day is gonna be different now too,
It
because
may
they're gonna
be,
have to meet the needs
but-
of parents and most of
But
them.
I have said to everybody that was at the meeting today, I expect all staff to be there Monday, even though they can't meet with their principal. They can be in their building, you know, checking out things in their room, thinking about, have paras help wherever they might be needed. But everybody is there Monday to get the message of what is gonna be developed in their building.
Can they be there to meet the requirement?
After that, they may have different kinds of days. Some of them may say.
I just didn't know how that would affect with what's in their contract and then pay and all the either.
As long as I'm not asking them to work from 8 to 8 at night, I think we'll be okay if they can pick their schedule and do their day. Does that make sense? Yep.
If it works.
Because they are professionals and they do have a contract and they understand that And we all want to be treated like we know our job and that we can be trusted to do what we do around the schedule that works for how they develop the competencies for their children, their students.
I think that they know, they understand, and they know what their kids need. And they'll know that there are parents that need them in the evening, and they're not gonna say, my day ended at 3:45, I'm not calling a parent at night. I don't see any teacher ever doing that. I think that they want this to work too, and they want what's best for our kids, and we'll work together.
Well, and the teachers that worked with us today, they understand that this competency piece is key. Our first graders are gonna go to second grade, and they're gonna be expected to be ready to start second grade things. Our seventh graders are gonna go to eighth grade algebra or whatever, and the expectation, and the good thing is, because Mrs. Wolting does the math, you know, she can focus really well on what she's gonna expect them to do as eighth graders. So there's some benefits of our small size. We're not like some school districts, maybe it's Wallace County. They only have 50 kids in elementary school. They can keep having school because they will not have more than 10 people in a room at a time. We also are working closely with the special ed co-op so that because that was the biggest hang up when all this started out was, we have to take care of all children and meet their needs. And Denise mentioned today, not only do we have to monitor the time for special ed, but we have a Title I program that there are time restraints that we have to be able to report. So all of those things have to be documented so that when they come back and look at us for those federally funded programs, we have to show that we've met the requirement of the law. And special ed people in Beloit understand that and are working with us, and they're allowing the special ed parents to be available and to be utilized in our buildings how we need them, because they, like us, they have to
They have to pay them, so, yeah.
We don't have state assessments either that we have to worry about this spring, so that frees up some time to get some things accomplished that maybe wouldn't have been able to because of the time frames that the number of hours that taking tests take out of our classrooms.
Yes.
So,
So it sounds like after this coming week, we're gonna have some more clarification then as
Yeah.
far as the plan.
yes.
So, very good. Any other questions, concerns in regards to the continuing learning plan?
No, good job.
Because then we got food services program modification.
I am really excited about this. This is one of the benefits that the State Department, the Food Service, Child Nutrition and Wellness Department came up with. We can put into place a plan for children in our community from age 1 to 18. 1 to 18. You have the menu for the first 2 weeks, and this afternoon about 2 o'clock or 2:30, I got a call that our waiver application was approved. And because we have to pay your food service people, we've worked a couple days this week, and they have a menu plan here. What will happen is, we'll have designated times, and we have some community people that have said they'd help if we have to do home delivery. You see, I'm looking at one person because Bree and her husband indicated they'd help with that. But we'll have sites, and I totally did not think about Beverly and Barnum.
Oh.
And today, when I hadn't heard from the State Department about approving that, because they said, well, you'll get it by in the morning, and we were talking with the principals, Denise said to me, well, what about Beverly? And it's like, so I contacted her, and she modified. So because we can use our paras, we can use, if we have to do home deliveries, we can do that. We have community people. If we don't have our paras doing other things that are meaningful, they can help deliver to Beverly or Barnard. So the other thing is, depending how the teachers unfold their lessons, and if we get to the place that we can have like 50 kids in the building, 5 groups of 10 individuals, we could have them come in the morning, go go to school for 3 hours, something like that, go home, and as they leave, they can take their lunch and their breakfast for the next day. If the bus does its normal route, and the kids that may not be in school that day, they can take their lunch and the bus can come, the kids have
Can
to
meet the
pick
bus
up
and pick up
lunch.
their food. That
So,
would be great.
you know, there are some things that may unfold as this plan unfolds, because there's still many unknowns. But the point is, these are meals because they fall under this special federal program that families don't have to pay. As long as they bring the kids, and we'll ask them to call in before 9 o'clock, between 7:30 and 9 o'clock to the schools. They can come to the parking lot, and because, again, we have to keep that distance.
Yeah.
We have to figure out how to get the food out there. But you can see, the ladies were so excited because the options allow them to put styrofoam meals, hot meals, so they can use the food. When this first started was, how are we gonna use the things we had in the freezer? Well, this all happened before we got fresh vegetables, so that's not an issue. Canned fruit, they can wait, but there are certain requirements you have to have in their meal, and they can empty out all of them, because they said we have lots of chicken. They can empty out the chicken patties for sandwiches, they can empty out the chicken nuggets, and somebody has chicken legs. So all those things can be utilized that have already been purchased and taken out of the freezer and used. As you see, some meals are hot meals. John, you'll notice the sloppy Joe, we're using the beef, the different kinds of things that we have on hand, and it doesn't cost them anything, and we will get reimbursed. We have to keep the records, and they have to meet the guidelines of the 5 points that have to be on their tray, so they'll have to take everything. And the kiddo has to be there to take the meal, or has to be with the parent. So Patty, if your girls were little and you drove up with them, we'd have to look in your car and see both girls and then give you the 2 meals. So the kids have to be seen. But your girls can come and get them on their own. Because, so,
Good question in regards to that. Thinking about food safety when we deliver to people's houses, are we able to maintain the food at the right temperature?
we will be okay because we'll get it right away. Yes, we'll make sure that works.
I was just wondering, because I know at the hospital living meals, some meals,
You have
and
to
that was
have
eating
certain,
bags.
that's it, you're right, and we'll make sure, but home delivery is not our top priority.
Yeah.
Our top priority is having them come to the school and pick it up, or getting it to Beverly and Barnard, so that we take care of
I
those.
heard about 2 different school districts right now. One of them, the parent is coming out, driving out in the back of the school, and they're picking up the food for that day. Another school district, what they're doing is, they come there on Monday, picking up the food from Monday, Tuesday, and then come on Wednesday, picking up Wednesday, Thursday, and then come on Friday for Friday's meal.
And then I had somebody tell me that their district, the bus drivers were delivering the meals to everyone. And so like everyone's coming up with a plan for what works for them.
Correct.
And if you employ your own drivers,
You can do that.
you can do that much easier than what
What's
we're
gonna
working.
happen to them?
Well, after we get through tonight, and you know what we're doing, I will call and have a conversation with them.
Okay.
We will still be billed because we're under contract, that's why I'm not feeling bad if we end up asking them to deliver meals on their route at noon. If people call in,
Because we're gonna be paying
See, that's
DS
what-
anyways,
yeah.
but will those drivers get paid?
that's a DS bus line business, I think.
And if we have the bus driver, how long is the longest bus route that one driver has? Isn't that about 1 hour?
Well, with kids, it's a little more than that.
Okay, well, without kids, I'm thinking about delivering food because of food safety, because you can't do it more than 1 hour.
We just have to have the right equipment to
Yeah.
keep it. But if it's a cold meal,
Correct.
we're not always doing the hot meal things. This goes, I put it in until May 22nd, the Friday after we do in-service, and kids won't be in school, but teachers will be working, and so the application that I'll ask you to approve goes through that Friday that we have the last teachers in school, so that, because the cooks, we will cook everything at the high school, because their kitchen is big enough for both staffs to be there, put things together, and then put, again, transport meals in an appropriate fashion to the elementary school to pick up. If parents say that's where I have to go, if they can come here, we'll encourage them to come to the high school.
Dr. Summers, it's also important to note that the food kiosk cart that we ordered through the breakfast grant program that we received, it should be here about the first part of April, and it has heating components, heating warmers. It also has cold components, so we could use that and just wheel it out to the front, but it should be here sometime around the first part of April.
Be great.
So,
So,
absolutely.
and then we can say we've used it and
Absolutely.
depend on it. So you can see what the plan is to give them the hot meal, the meal for lunch, and then have breakfast for the next day. And
That would be great.
it is, there's enough hardship in this to be able to provide that to families that want
They're gonna
that
need that.
option.
Will there be any sort of flexibility with, like, you're bringing up the example of when somebody comes to pick up their meal, if the children have to be in the vehicle? What if there's a child that's sick and they don't want to load them up and bring them to come get the meal? I mean, do we have the option to be a little flexible
I
on that?
do not think so, but I will double check on that.
Could they be a home delivery?
That's probably what you would have to do,
Just
because
do
you
that,
have to see the kids.
If Sloan was sick, it would be that Patty would home deliver to her house and they'd see the kid and meal. So we can find some ways around that.
Or a mask.
I just know that's
We
definitely
can
not
ask.
something that's gonna come up.
That's true, I think that's probably what they would say.
That would be something that the paras or, sorry Patty.
No, that's okay. No,
You're saying
I would
it's
do it.
Yeah.
We
Okay.
take to food to the elderly, so we can take it to the young too.
So I just wanted you to know we do have that in place. I did learn, with much to my surprise, the program that we've had in the summer the last 2 years was not truly hosted by the district, although we've provided somebody that helped serve it. So I'll be working with the kitchen staff at putting together our own summer food service program, so the reimbursement comes to us, and you can have a little more flexibility in what goes in the bag, the lunch bag, went through that summer food service program. So we'll be coming to you.
Isn't that's like a grant or something in the hospital, isn't it?
Yeah.
The hospital, yeah.
The hospital, we thought we were going to do the program again this summer,
Yeah.
but we learned recently that that is not going to happen, so we have to come up with our own. And we do have the intern from Next Tech coming, and built into his schedule is helping to serve those meals, so. Not yet.
So these meals are paid for by a grant?
They're paid for by the federal government in the child nutrition program because of hardships, and closing our schools is a hardship.
Were you meaning the summer meals?
No, I was curious, Steve, whether it was gonna be billed similar to daily lunches like they have been, or whether it was out of our
There'd be no
pockets.
charge to parents.
No charge for age 1 to 18.
So it's age of 15.
And when you approve this tonight, we'll get some stuff on the website and do the thrill share call, so parents know that they will need to call. If they want a meal Monday, they'll need to call Monday. There won't be a breakfast served on Fridays, but
Yeah.
you get the gist of it, okay?
All right, any other questions?
That's good.
So moving on to action items. First, we need a motion to approve the food service waiver and plans.
I'll move that we approve that.
Thank you, Deborah. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Gina. Any discussion? All those in favor? 7-0. And next, we need to approve actions related to school closing and a planned learning program.
So move.
Thank you, Patty. One second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Bree. Any discussion? All those in favor? 7-0. And do we want to set up an additional meeting to kind of follow up on how things are going, or do we want to wait until we hear from Dr. Summers and the principals in regards to having a plan in place? Because because I know we have this whole next week for you guys to plan. Be interesting, I think it'd be interesting to hear what plans we're coming up.
Yeah, because, I'm trying to look at the calendar over there as to where we are and where our next meeting is. That's still 2.5 weeks out.
Yeah.
So it would be nice to get together and see where we're at and how things are.
Okay. So do you want to do,
I usually do next Thursday. I mean, does that give them enough time to get full plan, I mean.
Thursday or Friday?
I'm busy Thursday.
Probably Friday, you think?
I would say Friday would be better.
Yeah.
Friday.
Friday.
Yeah, 'cause I want to give you ample time to
Yeah.
look at all the logistics, make sure we get that.
So Friday,
Well, if we need, do we need to wait? for
At
the
what
next-
time
for
will
the
work
next-
with board members?
That's what I was.
Friday anytime after
Oh, the
2.
week of the 30th, is that what
We're,
you're asking?
yeah, we're asking
Better?
them whether that would be better for them to, we wait till the first part of the next week. for
Oh,
them.
like-
Have it implemented a little bit?
That would give us a week to collect
Yeah.
sort of community feedback and some data and just
Yeah.
work out any logistical
We should do
issues.
it Monday night like they normal.
So Monday night the 30th. So we're talking about then.
Okay, what time?
Normal board meeting, 7
Do
PM.
you want to do it, I'm flexible.
I prefer earlier,
Okay.
just because I'm having to meet clients after work quite a bit, so I would,
So what time would work for you? Do you think?
like, this 4 o'clock time works well.
Which for me doesn't normally work, I had to make all arrangements to get it to
Okay.
work at 4.
5? David's looking over there.
Between 8 and 8 works best.
Or we do 7 AM? Just,
You really want to meet?
We can do
I'm
7,
flexible.
that's,
I'm flexible.
be flexible somewhat.
I mean, that Monday I could do any time.
So this
I can
afternoon
schedule
morning
myself.
is busy, 7 AM, Monday morning.
I could do that.
Are they ready for 7 AM anyway? That's what I'm like.
If you're gonna do the morning, maybe you wanna wait till Tuesday, the 31st, after that first day of
First day.
school. I don't know.
That's not bad. Well, it's not great, yeah.
I just think they need all the time they need in there in
Yeah.
that first week. What, we're gonna know if there's any.
Do we need to even have anything, because our board meeting is that next Monday, and if you wait until the Thursday or Friday, I mean, is that 2 day gonna be,
That we have 1 week trial.
That's kind of what I'm thinking.
yeah.
Just wait.
Give
till
us a
board
week
meeting.
with-
If something would come up.
I mean, it gives us a week to plan, it gives us a week to implement, and see where we're at, and
Then
we
we
can
have some
just
feedback.
let you know what changes we've made or what's working.
Okay.
That sounds good.
So no, we're-
And I know Dr. Summers will keep us updated too, so.
If you have to have one, make sure, I mean,
Yeah.
everyone
Yeah,
knows that we have that, I
sure.
would think, yeah.
All right, so the next meeting then will be at the next board meeting in April. Is there any additional board request?
I don't know if this is the time, I'm concerned budget-wise, how is this gonna affect our budget? Our budget for next year is already a topic that we keep kind of,
We keep watching it. We will still have our huge special ed payment, but we'll be getting reimbursement. We'll still have our transportation payment, which is big. We should be finishing up the FEMA shelter middle of April, so we'll take care of that. And then from there, we'll be able to, one of the interesting things is, I don't know if you guys were aware of this relating to the budget, but every month we get this last time, a $3,000 bill from the architect. And I don't, yeah, and so every month we have a bill to the architect, which wasn't in what I understood was planned. So there are some things that we don't know about like that, but we will, we have our normal bills, we know the salaries, the expectation of the state, just try, but if we can get ahead of some of the summer things, if we have some people that will paint together, I mean, there can be some benefits that,
but also like next year's, we still haven't had much conversation about, what are we gonna do come the next budget year?
yeah.
Yeah, it's a great information as far as that. I definitely would like you to visit with our architect to see what that is in regards to, because we have to sign a contract with him.
I will get
And maybe he's just splitting his fee up.
And that could be, because in there it says there's a 20% something with it. I just was surprised the first month it didn't surprise me so much, but every month.
And it could be his fee, just like you said, kind of prorated out.
So we are, I try to check with the new board treasurer every week, and we're hanging in there.
Well, it's gonna be April, we're gonna be needing to talk about the next school year budget is kind of also what I'm a little concerned about, because we really haven't had much conversation regarding that.
What are you used to getting in April without the budget next year?
We keeps being mentioned that with our account being down, that our budget's going to be reduced. I
So
thought we
you
were
want
gonna
some
have,
information about
I'd like
that?
to know what's gonna happen with that, where we're at, how are we gonna,
eat budget?
for the next year. I mean, we need to be thinking about that.
Yeah. We're getting 90,000 less, where are we at?
Yeah, is that how much we're losing, and where are we gonna cut 90,000? You know, maybe that will be a time, maybe, I know there's a lot, you know, maybe each of the buildings knows places we could cut and save, things that we could do. I mean, what are we gonna do with $90,000 less? I'd like that to be a conversation next month.
And I've been working with the principals on an educational plan with you, so
Okay.
we'll share that next month.
Okay, next we have an executive session for personnel, and
I would ask for that for just 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay, need a motion to go into executive session for 5 minutes.
I so move.
Thank you, David. Do I have a second?
A second.
Thank you, Gina. The motion by David, second by Gina, to use the 298 Board of Education due to executive session at 5:13 for 5 minutes with the superintendent for the purpose of discussion personnel matters for non-elected personnel, and a board return to open meeting at 5:18. In this agreement, the executive session is required to protect the privacy interest of identifiable individuals. All those in favor?